material rolling down the top of the sand dune, because it's Martian spring at this time. It's Martian spring, and the carbon dioxide, which is ice melting underneath, this is NASA's view, is evaporating and moving material, and material is rolling down the.
But it also, let's look at the next picture. I think the next picture is almost identical, actually. I don't know whether we made a mistake there copying. Let's go to 21B.
Yeah. I think it's the same one, actually.
Is it the same one?
Yeah, it's the same one.
Because there is a bigger shot of this from a bigger distance, and this is like an edit from it, and it looks like an ocean at the top, doesn't it? It looks like a beach.
Yeah, you don't get the context of this. This is actually looks like a crater, a very, very large crater, and you've got like a normal desert terrain with desert rubble and a few, on the top. And as you go down to the crater into the shadows, you actually start to see sand dunes and more detail. And this is why you're seeing this at these objects. Yeah, some people think personally, I don't think it's very clear evidence of trees, because if you look at some of them, I mean, people say the vertical trees coming off the top of the image. To me, some of them look vertical, which could be an optical illusion because of the angle of the camera, but not all of them are pointing in the same direction. Some are pointing maybe at say about 45 degrees, which basically to me shows that these are things just rolling down the sand dunes. I might be wrong, there might actually be trees, but I don't think they are. I think it's more evidence of things rolling down the hillside. I think it's more interesting that the actual article was in the newspapers saying there were trees on Mars and nothing else, when we have good evidence. We showed you a few examples before. There's lots of images like that, but the fact that the newspapers have been focused on this one image, to me, is a bit of a distraction, like the Bigfoot one was. Okay. I have to say.
Neil from Cheshire says, "Hi Theo, what does your guest know about Olympus Mons? Could this volcano have erupted and destroyed past life on Mars?"
Well, Olympus Mons, it's actually the largest volcano in the solar system, actually. It's 17 miles from base to top, and yeah, it's at 19.5 degrees latitude, which some people might be interested in later. We might get into that later, I don't really know. But
yes, okay.
Yeah, Olympus Mons. Mars is geologically dead as far as we understand it, so it's got no processes.
Got no volcanoes.
Yeah, so it's got no current volcanism as far as we know. I've actually seen a few articles and papers come through NASA suggesting that they might have been wrong. That assumption might be wrong. So they're thinking that maybe there is a bit of volcanism going on, but from the data historically, they think there isn't. If there is, there's not a lot going on. But as for Olympus Mons being the main cause of the kind of the decimation of the Martian surface and the possible eradication of most, or if not all, of life on Mars, if Mars ever had life, it is possible that was the case. I mean, we've seen evidence on the surface, for example. A lot of the materials you find on the surface, you do normally find on the interior of planets in the mantle. Like iron, for example, is normally found in the interior of planets, terrestrial planets, anyway.
Well, didn't you suggest when we were discussing this before the show that there are some theories that Mars was once the moon of a much larger planet, which was somehow destroyed, perhaps in a collision or something?
Yeah, there's compelling evidence actually that Mars was basically a satellite of a planet, and which was basically in a tidal lock, effectively. So like our moon, one side always faces the Earth. This particular scenario, what you had is Mars. One side of Mars always faced the same side of this planet, and which is why, with the oceans, you had the oceans on the same opposite sides, because they were locked in a tidal lock. So where unlike tides on the Earth, where it changes as the moon goes around the Earth, the tide in this case was stuck effectively in a kind of it was like a standing wave, effectively.
Okay.
And those are the 2 points where the Spirit landed. But yeah, the point is that the evidence shows, or the theory is that this planet was destroyed somehow, and the debris from this planet then impacted onto one side of Mars.
Surely if it was this huge planet was destroyed, surely it would have destroyed its moon as well, or its moon would have...
Well, if that theory is correct, it very nearly did, because one side of Mars has got this line go around it, a clear line, where you can see one side of it, you see massive cratering. Another side is actually quite blissy bland. There's not as many craters.
It's much smoother.
It's much smoother, yeah. They call it the line of dichotomy that goes around. It's about 30-degree angle. And the interesting thing is, once the south side, which is the most heavily cratered, is very, very thick, whereas the crust is very, 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 very thick, whereas the north side is very thin. And the theory about the parent planet exploding basically states that what's actually happened is it decimated one side, and basically lots of material from the planet ended up, the old planet that blew up ended up on the one on Mars, and also some of Mars's crust got ripped off in the process. which explains the kind of that line of dichotomy, actually, interestingly. It's the only theory that actually that does.
Oh, so hold on a second. Are you saying then that this big planet, with Mars as its satellite, was in the same orbit that Mars is in, or that Mars went to a new orbit when it was released, when it was freed from its exploding?
Well, how the theory goes is that prior to that event, is that we didn't actually have an asteroid belt. We have two asteroid belts. I'll describe in the solar system briefly. We have the Earth coming out from the Sun, then we have Mars. Mars is in the one asteroid belt. Further out we have another asteroid belt, and then further out still is the next planet, which is Jupiter. So we have two asteroid belts. Two asteroid belts they're chemically different. They've got different types of materials, so they are independent. Now, the theory goes that Mars existed as a moon of a planet where the first asteroid belt is, but there was no asteroid belt. It was a decimation of the planet that caused the debris that it became the asteroid belt.
Okay, and wouldn't it have tended to reform into a planet again? That's why I find it difficult to...
Well, depending on... if you've ever seen... one thing about the kind of interior of a planet, it's under very high temperatures and pressures. So if depending on the size of the impact, if a massive comet, for example, came and hit the parent planet, there is potential that the whole planet could not just be it might just absorb it all. If things under pressure, the whole thing would explode. It's kind of like gases coming out of something. Gases come out of solution. If you change the pressure, the whole thing can just erupt really dramatically. Just think of Mount St Helens and Mount St Helens blow off the side of the mountain. Now think of that on a global scale. Everything gets blown so far off that it's projected so far away from the planet that they can't coalesce back into one again.
And it sent Mars skittering off to a new orbit.
Well, Mars would have been left to kind of, assuming its trajectory wasn't changed that much, it would still be going around the orbit of the Sun, but it would have left Mars, it would have tweaked the orbit a little bit, but it would have left Mars in that more or less that position. It have found its natural balance between the gravities of all the other planets, basically.
But isn't there some sort of cosmic order that has been worked out that you will always find planets of a certain size at a certain distance from any given sun? Isn't there some equation?
Well, yeah, I guess I don't know too much about this, but I know about the accretion theory, the accretion disk theory, where the planets in our solar system formed out of all this material spinning around all together, all like this kind of soup of material, effectively, which basically separated into different kind of bands of chemistry, basically. So the reason you have the gas planets with their particular chemistry and the terrestrial planets with different chemistries, because
so the rocky ones are nearer the sun.
Yeah, you had separation of material depending on the composition. So when the planets coalesced into the form that they're in now, they got the certain chemistries they have because of the position on the accretion disk, because it was chemically different. So this is why Mars and the Earth are very similar in that regard, because they're very close on that disk.
Okay, all right. Here's one. Jim from Larne, was there a photo of a plank of wood on Mars?
I haven't heard about that, but there are...
I've seen that.
I don't know.
I think I've seen that on your website, haven't I?
There's one of a slab that looks like a lump of concrete, actually.
Is that? Oh, okay.
It could be kind of wood, but then we're assuming that it looks like it's building material, put it that way.
Yeah.
Because what you have is, it's actually the same one I mentioned where you actually look like you've got rainwater at the bottom, because it was taken just after one of the rovers seemed to got its solar cells cleaned on the back of it, on what charges the battery, and so there's water on the bottom, but you have these kind of rectangular blocks, but they're lying on top of each other. I don't know if this is the same image you're talking about, but this is.
Well, let's go to that image. This thing is like.
I don't actually have this. We don't have this image on here.
We've got image 30 though, haven't we?
Which was 30.
The one I forgot. This is from David Hoagland's.
Richard Hoagland's website.
Richard Hoagland's
website. Credit Richard Hoagland for this one. This is from his website.
The bottom photographs are pictures taken on Mars.
Yeah.
And then above is the Richard Hoagland website version of what they might actually look like.
Yeah, Richard Hoagland works with a guy called Mike Barra, who published his last book, and this is actually copyrighted to Mike Barra. He published this on his last book, and what they're showing here is basically evidence of what claims are, that is evidence of artificial materials on Mars. Artifacts, basically, yeah. Small ones were taken in basically by the rovers as they've been driving around. So they've shown an example at the top is what they a model of what they think this thing might look like, and at the bottom you see various different images showing what the spirit photographs.
And there are lots of these images.
Yeah, this is just one example of a massive collection.
Well, many images. Well, it's almost hard to work out what those things could be.
Well, from my position,
if they weren't artificial, if they weren't made by a sentient being.
I mean, if these are artificial, for these to be artificial, obviously if we prove that there was intelligent life on Mars, it would need to